someone lived there and they didn't want houses.
Just unlike
Pushed
like
it.
this, right here.
Probably.
Good.
So, whereas that would, now they want more density, not
Yeah,
less.
like it's
So,
called,
yeah.
40 feet again, it makes sense in the city limits.
Yeah. Yep.
No, it becomes,
All right, are we all set?
not,
I'll call the February 5th meeting of the Hastings Planning Commission to order. We'll begin with roll call. Bolthouse. Here. Darling. Here. Foster. Here. Blake.
here,
Mauer.
Here.
McLean.
here,
Moyer Kale.
here.
Tassava. Here. And Hatfield here. If you will, please stand and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You've received a draft agenda. Are there any additions, deletions anyone would like to propose to that? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as written.
Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. You have also received the minutes from our last meeting, January 2nd. Are there any corrections to those minutes?
I'll move approval of the minutes. Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same. We have no information items. We have no public hearings. We have one item of new business, which is a request from Mr. and Mrs. Moyer at 936 West Clinton Street to consider rezoning their property from RS to R2. Ian?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Moyer reached out to me, and time goes by so fast. I think it was probably either right before the holidays or right after. He's interested, or he and his wife are interested in having an addition placed on their home at 936 West Clinton Street. Being in the suburban residential or RS zoning district, the side setbacks in that zoning district are 40 feet. But you can't have a side setback less than 15 feet. So in essence, one side could be 25 feet, the other side could be 15, or whatever combination of that. Currently, his home, the way it sits, is non-conforming because the easterly setback is 8 feet or so against the property line. So the house itself currently in the zoning district is legal, but it doesn't conform with the current ordinance. So Mr. Moyer and I discussed options. Obviously, Zoning Board of Appeals is one landing place, but, the preference is in a case like this that he would come to the Planning Commission, have Planning Commission possibly consider a rezoning of the property. So looking at the lay of the land, and I put the zoning maps in front of you tonight, and I'll bring up the map also. Pretty much all of the properties off to the east and not too far from Mr. Moyer's residence are in the R2 zoning district. So if you look at that strip of land that we placed the map in, all of those highlighted areas outlined in red are currently located in the suburban residential zoning district. If you look at the homes in that swath of area compared to the homes just to the east, there's not a lot of difference. In the makeup of the homes, in the layout of the neighborhood. So a rezoning to R2 would be a consideration for the Planning Commission, and also, and I'll let Rebecca weigh in on this too. As you know, as we discussed at the end of last year when we were revamping our work task list, we have a considerable amount of residential zoning classifications in the city. Some of them, there are not a lot of differences between those. So, this could be an opportunity for a planning commission, if you so choose, to take a look at, if you consider Mr. and Mrs. Moyer's request, to also look at maybe some of those other properties in the area for possible consolidation into the R2 zoning district. So with that, I can turn it over to Rebecca, or I can turn it over to Mr. and Mrs. Moyer for further clarification.
Let's hear from Rebecca, and then I've got a couple of things I'll add as well, and then we'll hear from the Moyers.
So essentially, the rezoning request, as you know, one of the things that as a planning commission you would be guided by is the future land use map. And the future land use map actually pretty accurately represents the current zoning pattern that occurs there. So the RS is actually one of your zoning districts. It's quite different than your R2 district, and in terms of what it permits. So, there is a distinction there on the type of residential and the density of that residential. So your master plan right now calls for that area that is shown in the R2 primarily as your core neighborhood, which is small lot, and then also, in addition to single family, some multifamily options. The RS, which is that which is currently zoned RS, is primarily in the residential growth area that has a 15,000 square foot lot size. So it's a much, third of an acre, so that's a much different density than the core neighborhood. So the master, I guess what I'm saying is that as the current zoning pattern is relatively consistent with your master plan. So I don't know that your master plan would guide you or direct you to rezone to the R2. On the other hand, I certainly think, as you know, you can certainly go through the amendment process, because the boundaries of that core neighborhood, you can certainly view this area and say, well, the parcel layout might be different than the R2 to the east, but it certainly has the potential of being divided into smaller pieces if you were to rezone it, and maybe you see that it's appropriate to shift that core neighborhood boundary to the east. So I don't know that the amendment would be, wildly illogical, but I do think it would require an amendment.
I'm going to give just a little different take on that, and for those of you that don't know, I happen to live in this area. If you look at the area in red, I'm the last house on Walnut Street on the south side of Walnut. But, when I look at this, the only way that I make sense of why this was done anyway is if you look at the bigger map that you have in front of you. I don't know that any of us know, and I don't know that it's worth trying to go back and reconstruct history, but I'm guessing that when this was done, it was done when the Ironside Drive development went in, which is where Levi lives. And it certainly fits the definition of what was built in there, but I think they swept back to the east and picked up this area as part of that action. And most of the houses that are within the red outline that you have in the packet pre-exist, I think, this zoning classification. The RS. And substantial, I would guess that over half of them are non-conforming with the requirements of the RS because of that.
With respect to lot size?
With respect to lot size.
So they're less than 15,000?
Yes, and also with setback requirements. They're either at or in some cases, I think, less than the 15-foot minimum, and I think the 15-foot was less than what we defined as optimal in that zone anyway.
I would be guided by the setbacks.
Okay.
But I do think your lot size, Because I was looking at it and the R2, all the area to the east on R2, you can see the lots are significantly smaller.
Yes.
That's not to say that I'm
No.
not arguing that the boundary
No.
can't be shifted. I
Right.
just, to me, the lot size, the lot layout seems, I can see the distinction between the RS and the R2.
I think if you look at this, it's easy to say that, and I would agree with you. I'm not sure if you drive through the neighborhood,
That you feel that way?
that you would necessarily feel that way, because I don't think the character changes as you go, from east of Cass to west of Cass.
I would agree, and I
And-
live to the east of there,
Yeah.
and my lot is as big as these lots.
I don't think you're gonna have a quorum for your rezoning.
I know, I was just thinking
It's
that.
like the fourth person who's indicated they live in there.
No, she is not.
Oh, you don't
in
live
it.
there.
I'm just outside too.
Levi is outside the area.
No, I don't live in the
box,
box, but I live east of here, and
So,
my lot
I'm
is
the
as
only
big as
one that's
these.
actually in it.
Yeah, but if you're within, if you
Oh.
guys include that whole area.
No, I'm not.
If you're within 300 feet of it.
She's not.
I'm not.
Yeah.
She's a couple thousand feet.
Nor is Levi, so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So-
Nobody moved.
I know.
Right,
Before
yes.
this.
So anyway, I'm just saying, I think from a character standpoint, I can certainly understand the request and the logic of bringing this into conformity with the stuff on to the east, so.
I know you didn't ask me this, but procedurally speaking, it's clear that you need a master plan amendment in order to support the rezoning. I always think ideally, you hold your master plan amendment consideration at the same time that you do the rezoning. You consider, right, if you support an amendment, then you proceed on to the rezoning. But I also know that greatly changes the noticing that is required, because the master plan noticing is so much different, that there are some communities, I don't think it's ideal, but it's certainly possible, that some communities will, they go through the process of reviewing what you would review to consider an amendment to the future land use map, but you just don't go through the noticing, and then at the end of the year, you do one single noticing and make all amendments to your future land use map at the same time. I only offer that because,
No, that-
because whether you
that would seem to
think the
make sense.
rezoning is
Right.
logical or not, it requires a plan amendment, yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So, because of all of our familiarity with where you are and what you want to do, you've already heard a substantial amount of discussion about it. Is there anything you'd like to share with us?
I think, first of all, the address is 939
Yeah.
West Clinton. The star is correct on where it's at, but it's 939. But the star is correct.
Okay,
So, the reason for the rezoning is, of course, we just moved into town and we're looking to hopefully make this our last stop, but we just want to beautify that house. We love the house, we love the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
And because the house is on an angle to the lot, that really hurts our setback to the west. And so we can't do much more with it, but hopefully add on to that side to really give us enough space to stay there. That's our big thing. Again, we love it there, but we need that flexibility, and then, because we're gonna re-side and everything else, and we do all this, but we need to add on a little bit more space to make it work for us, so we're just asking for that change, so.
okay. Questions, comments?
I do not have any.
I would just agree that I think the distinction I would notice would be more from here to the Ironside Drive area that just feels totally different than this neighborhood. So I think it's reasonable from a look and feel standpoint, I guess.
I almost feel the opposite, though, that there is a character change difference once you cross over Benton Street heading west. And the lots do become significantly larger. It's about 1/3 of an acre, right? When I pull it up on here and start clicking on lot sizes, most of them are 1/3 of an acre, I would say. There's a few that are non-conforming. but they do appear to be a third of an acre. Is there no method to, maybe this is a good question for Dan, to get an exemption to a setback? I mean, they're firm, there's no room to the west there to, because he wouldn't be changing his non-conforming aspect of the home.
It would take action through the zoning board of appeals to do that.
When you walk that neighborhood, to me, there is a big character change as you head west, like from the high school on.
Actually, just when you cross over South Cass, I feel like our end
Yeah.
totally changes.
It has a different feel to it.
It's almost rural,
Yeah.
right there.
Certainly the lots are bigger, yeah, but I don't think, I mean, one of your concerns was, you know, if we changed, would it result in properties being split in order to,
It will. Well, if you,
no, it won't.
well, if you change it to the R2,
Right,
yeah, because your dimensional standards are less.
no, what I'm saying is that this is totally built out, and the way it's built out, yeah, there's not room to subdivide one of those lots and create another buildable site. You've probably only got 2 or 3 properties where that might be a potential. Mine being one of them. But otherwise, the way the current structures are located on those lots, you can't create 2 buildable lots even under the R2 requirements.
Of course, I know we're in the process of having a conversation you would have at the public hearing, where we're, right? But it
We'll have
does
it
make
again.
me, what'd you say?
I said, we'll have it again.
But it is making me feel like the, and maybe this is what you were gonna say, Sarah, is that what you're trying to do is find a way to have setback requirements that offer more flexibility. And not necessarily that you think it's appropriately zoned R2. Right, because you're going to have to change the master plan to core neighborhood, which is core neighborhood supports R2 and A1. Rezone to R2, which has different standards to it. Really, because of you're feeling that the setbacks, not only on the applicant's property, but in general, they're creating non-conforming circumstances for many of the properties. It almost makes me wonder if it's a setback thing, and maybe you work toward a setback solution rather than manipulating your future land use map. Just a thought.
So is that something where they'd be more successful going to ZBA than to try to rezone this property? You don't think so?
I don't think so, because it's somewhat a self-created, I mean, there's a house there already.
Right. Yeah.
But maybe that setback for RS doesn't need to be what it is. I was
That's what
also
I'm
going,
thinking.
I think that's where you were going with
Yeah.
that, which I certainly think is worth looking at. Do you know right off, Becky, if, I can't recall, are accessory dwelling units and 2-family what's the difference between what's allowed in RS and in R2?
With ADUs?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember either, but I'm looking at it right now.
I think it's like both of them. Accessory dwelling units are allowed in both 2-family and RS on a state highway.
Oh.
So it kind of doesn't really matter for either one.
Oh, that's the old.
And that's been
This is
changed.
the one I printed off the website, so.
Yeah, but
Just
that-
printed it today, so if you have something there, you might want to look into that one.
This isn't right. All right, I will fix this.
Yeah, I just pulled it off today, it's right there.
It's still on the site here.
What kind of shenanigans are going on mine? All right, I apologize for
I know,
that.
I swear though, I swear when I looked it up at home today, the ADU text was in there.
I'm wondering if they didn't take out everything they were supposed to take out when they added it. Where was that?
Accessory dwellings right
Oh,
here.
it's on the-
And this is for one family R. If you go about halfway back, you got the suburban one in there.
While they're researching, any comments from down here?
I already mentioned my query.
Pardon?
I just asked if it'd be easier to go through ZBA and change the setback.
No, but I do kind of like Rebecca's thought that maybe, you know, the easiest way to deal with this issue is to change the setbacks in RS as opposed to changing the overall zoning on it.
Now, you can have an ADU, you were talking about accessory dwelling units, right, Sarah?
Yes.
Yes, you, the way we've set that up is that you can have that on any lot where you have a single-family home.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was a difference. I think I would prefer, it's hard to say, not having all the information, but maybe looking at the appropriateness of the setback requirement as it is. That seems like it might be a better approach.
My question would be, if we deal with it by changing the setback, do we have to deal with all RS zoning rather than a
Yes.
subset, which is what we're talking about here?
That would be
Yeah,
all.
generally speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I will have to say, a 15/40 foot, let's say 15-foot side setback is high. I mean, even for a rural, and that's not even your most rural, but even for a rural zoning district, like for a township, that would be high. What do you think, what kind of a standard would remove the nonconformities in that area? What are they set back, 10 feet?
Some as little as 5, but I would say 10 is, somewhere in
Yeah.
there. Certainly something less than 15.
R2 is 6.
What is the setback that you're seeking? If you had your druthers, what would you be?
As much as I can get.
We just want to put a garage on, we need a garage, that's all we want, is a garage.
Yeah, it's lacking a garage, so that's what we're trying to do, but because of the angle of that house and the property line, and there's a privacy fence on the back side, but without a survey to know exactly where that line is, when we sit there and lay it out with a tape measure and paper and try to figure out exactly what we're gonna need, it's just really tough, because if I don't know exactly where that line is, right? I don't know if anybody does, because the house was built in 1960 or so I don't know if they surveyed it back then, or where that line is exactly to know for sure, but, I mean, the 6 foot might accommodate us, but I don't know that exactly, but I don't know if it can be 5 foot. I mean, we're looking to get anything that we can get to be able to do this addition. And again, just, we're just trying to make that house in that area as beautiful as we can, because we just really like that area, but with that saying, if we got 5 or 6, we may be able to do it, but we'd have to really go back and draw it out and see how close to that line.
10 wouldn't work, I mean,
No,
10 wouldn't work. We would need to get a one-car garage on
It's
there.
6.
What
25,
size of,
4,
what size
equal
of
to
lot do you
25.
have?
On the website, it says it's 3.3 or 0.33. Right on a third of an acre.
So it probably meets the 15,000 minimum standard.
Should we go ahead and notice this for both options? Notice the rezoning of this area and also notice the potential text amendment to the setback requirements, and then...
Because I was even thinking, you know, what some communities do is they will apply a proportionate setback reduction, a setback reduction that is proportionate to the lot size if your lot size is not conforming, right? So it's proportionate to whatever degree of nonconformity your lot size is. But if the lot size is 15,000 and it meets that, then that's not upheld, so. But yeah, I mean, both of those things would give you the option of flushing this out then.
0.33 acres is 14,374 square feet.
So they are non-conforming. Would it be, it's your garage you want to add on to?
Yes.
Is it detached?
No, it will be attached.
Oh. I was gonna say, a lot of times you have smaller setbacks for accessory buildings. But usually not, but only for detached,
Right.
so that angle. You may want to word it, your notice, to give you some latitude to consider a couple of different angles as it relates to the text amendment versus the rezoning.
Right.
Because there might be a couple of different ways that make more sense than another.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Which, are you talking of adding on the east or the west side of this?
West side.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because these...
There's not much room
Little
there.
room over
Okay.
there.
Big
For the
garage.
There was a
driveway.
one-car garage there now, but it's really basically a shed, so
Okay.
we're just gonna close that off and use it as a shed from the back end,
Yep,
so that it doesn't look like we have two garages.
gotcha. Thanks.
Okay, how's everyone feel about leaving ourselves with those two options to do some further research on, but go ahead and notice it so that we can hold a public hearing at our next meeting? Do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
Motion, is there support?
Support.
Motion and support. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, so you understand what we're doing?
Pretty much.
Okay, well,
Now then you gotta go to a public hearing.
But we'd have to do that no matter what. So there's no way around that. We do not have the ability to address your situation other than to say no without having a public hearing. So, but, you know, what will be under consideration at the public hearing will either be to rezone it from RS to R2 or to change the setback requirements, which is going to leave you in the same position one way or the other as far as the setback requirements.
We'll hope for the best.
And I'm thinking you probably want me to sort of think through and give you some options for.
Oh, I always want you to think through and give me some options, yes.
Well, I didn't want to presume.
No. Maybe you better show her the email.
Show her what'd you
Never
say?
mind, something else that Sarah and I were talking about involving the Joint Planning Commission, not the
Oh, yeah,
Hastings
yeah,
Planning
okay.
Commission. All right, further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay,
Thank you.
so you'll have to come back and see us again next month.
We'll be glad to.
Okay, great.
Is it always the first?
It is
Monday?
always the first Monday of the month, 7 o'clock. Unless the first Monday it happens to be a holiday, in which case we make it Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
We'll be there.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Welcome to Hastings.
Thank you.
How long ago did you buy the house?
September-ish, we had 40 acres over in Hope Township that we were gonna build a new house and
Wouldn't have had any setback requirements over there.
No.
It was pretty easy to build. We were hoping our kids were all gonna build on there and make our own little place, and then somehow she found this house and called me out, said, we gotta go look at this one, so, and we bought it on
the
the spot.
band and everything.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun walking over to the high school and with the grandkids, it just really makes it convenient, so, but, you know, we really like it. It's different than being in Canton, Michigan, that's for sure. It's a lot slower and less stressful, I think,
Okay.
so.
Well, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
we'll look forward to seeing you
All
next
right,
month.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
You have any questions
old
after?
business,
Come on.
JPA, JPC
Yeah,
update.
Appreciate it, thank you.
I have met in January.
Okay, any questions for Sarah or I on JPA, JPC? Really not much going on there at this point anyway, so. Work task list, Dan?
No, you'll see I got rid of the red and made everything in regular type bold areas, the areas that we've kind of added. I don't have any specific updates. I know Rebecca's going to be working on some.
Well, I was gonna say, right, you guys identified 2, 3, and 5, that, and so I'm thinking I can just get that started and get something in front of you, and maybe I should have done that for tonight, but if you want, I can do that for March. But I know now you have this, so I don't know how you wanna do your work route.
If at all possible, I'd say be prepared for March, and we'll see how things go. Any other thoughts on the work tasks? Okay,
Should we address the first one? Because it said we were gonna put it on hold till after the December 2023 meeting.
which was the workshop.
Right. So now that that's happened, I don't know that we need to readdress it now, but
Right.
maybe in the next few months, at least revisit it to give it some direction.
Regarding that item, I've had a couple of questions about the Green Street rebuild, like, will that be a project that there's public input on in terms of design, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So, the engineer is looking at, we've talked to him about some priorities and some different options, and so they're going to create different options that there will then be public input about. They've already worked in, I think, at least 2 public meetings into their plan. We'll just kind of feel it out and see how it goes. If we need more, we need to do something different, then we can be flexible that way.
Okay. Any other questions? Tracking report, Dan?
The only addition was the Chris Nelson N6 towing at the bottom of the final page. The conditions put in place by the Planning Commission have been added to that list.
Okay. No other updates on anything that we need to be aware of?
Nope, I don't believe so.
Okay. Questions for Dan on the tracking report?
Was part of the requirement or ask about the paved portion of the existing lot?
Yes, they've addressed that with zoning administrator myself.
And what was the determination on that?
They'll be, their parking spaces will be located on the current solid surface. They will not be adding any other solid surface.
I thought they needed more parking spaces.
No, they didn't after, we accepted their explanation of the type of activities that they were going to be conducting and decided that the spaces that were available were adequate.
But weren't some of the parking spots on the north side, and that is going to be the easement, the drive?
I've taken a look at where the easement sets and where the current solid surface is, and I've discounted areas that would be encroached on the easement. So there will be parking around the building on solid surface, satisfactory to meet the requirements of the ordinance.
Okay. Annual report.
Yes, this
Dan?
this is just re-looking at, unfortunately, I was under the weather last month, and when this came in front of you, the annual report is required via the municipal code in the Planning Commission section. Planning Commission is submit a annual report to council shortly after the end of the calendar year, outlining what the Planning Commission's activities were, whether it be site plan approval, zoning, rezoning, any type of activity that was completed by Planning Commission. So upon review and acceptance, this will be forwarded on to the City Council for their review. And again, it is a requirement of our municipal code.
A couple of years ago, when we discussed this, we decided that the format for it was basically to, go through and pull out all the action items that we have taken and use that as the basis for the report.
And this is an acceptable format as we were going down the redevelopment ready community path. This report historically was presented to the RRC, and this is an acceptable format to them.
ZBA hearings and rulings, are they part of Planning Commission?
They would be separate.
How does that get noticed? How does that get turned into a final report, an annual report?
There's not a requirement in the code for an annual report there. If, again, staff could prepare one annually for the ZBA, and would be happy to do so since I'm that staff.
Yeah, the Planning Commission is required by statute to produce an annual report, although to your point, some PCs do include
Right.
anything to do with planning and zoning, and so they'll include ZBA action.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I think it would fit.
Some do, yeah. So you're free to style your annual report however you want.
I guess my question, and even this, this we have no discretion on, it's a required report. But if you think about it, virtually every action we take is a recommendation to council. So council has already been engaged with anything, truly meaningful that we do. So, yeah, some of this becomes make work, yeah.
But some of it is an easy access report. If it's in this format versus, some record that I have a hard time tracing and following and referring to. This is what, 5 pages?
Somewhere like that. Planning Commission had been
Well-
busy.
The ZBA actions are more difficult to summarize in a format like this, though, I would say, because of all the different standards.
I would agree. There's so many standards and conditions that as, the zoning board of appeals has to go through and look at to summarize each one and how the zoning board of appeals deliberated on each one.
That's not in here, it's simply the request, the summary, then the action. I see no different. I seek relief from such and such a chapter, and approved or denied.
Yeah, the value of a ZBA action summary is the Planning Commission takes your lead from things the ZBA is constantly dealing with, right? So you don't need to know the basis or the conditions of their action, but what would be of value to a PC is how many they're seeing and if they're seeing a lot from the same standard, because then that's your trigger to like, there must be something going on with this standard that isn't just right. So, that's a nice tie-in. And the value of the annual report is more for your elected body than for you guys. It's a great way to summarize how productive you've been and to justify the expenses that you've incurred over the year, right? So for the elected body who's budgeting, they can look at that and say, yeah, we understand where this money has been spent. But then too, if you've peppered in there things, part of your work plan, where you're saying, and this coming year, we're gonna be working on these things, that allows the council to then budget too. And so it's a nice wrap-up every year if you're saying, here's what we did, we were productive on these fronts, and here's what we're gonna do next year. And I think that there's a nice place to wrap in a ZBA. And your ZBA doesn't need.
Handful or less
Yeah,
times a
which
year.
is also a really good sign, which would be a nice sign for your report, to say our ZBA only considered, 4 requests this year, as an example.
Well, and we've added to the work task, one of the items that became one of the ZBA rulings. So it is a direct tie-in, but we can talk later.
Well, I'll make a motion that we accept and submit to the city council the 2023 annual report for the planning commission. I'll support that.
Motion and support. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. And just make a note that prior to year end, we should revisit the idea of whether or not ZBA actions should be included in this report, or whether we'll trust on to the chairman to make sure that we're aware of anything that requires us to
I don't know about
action.
that.
Do I talk? Do I bring stuff up? Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. That's one reason why we have the tie
Right.
between ZBA and this group. So as was done, if you've got a ZBA issue that we need to consider, then we can add that to the work task list so that we don't forget it. So. Okay, open public discussion and comment. Seeing none. Staff comments.
Nothing further?
Seeing none. Commissioner comments.
I will just say it's exciting to see the development that's happening in this city right now.
Isn't it though? Yeah. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Support. Moved and supported. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. We are adjourned.
All right.
Thank you all. Enjoy this early spring while we can.